Classical Conversations presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today we are talking to Joe Knittig, a CEO and executive producer of the upcoming Angel film Possum Trot, but that's really to get people aware of the Global Orphan Project and a way that all of us can get involved in keeping kids out of the foster care system. The United States government spends over $30 billion on foster care annually, and Joe's got a plan to reduce that number, not because of that number itself, but because of the number of kids going in for poverty-related issues that really could be stopped if we get the church and Christians on board with helping people and meeting their need at the moment of need much earlier. It's a project that we are invested in and supporting here at Classical Conversations because we see that this need is so big. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, Joe, you used to be a trial lawyer, but then you've gotten involved with these nonprofits to help reduce orphans or help orphans and reduce foster care. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you came to be involved in these Christian services from a background that maybe people wouldn't expect.
Yeah, before I was a trial lawyer, I grew up, and in many ways, I was one of the children that right now, I have the privilege of serving. I never went into the foster system. I had a heroic mother that kept the seven of us afloat. But I know what it feels like to grow up in shame and grow up hurt and things happening to me and to my brothers and sisters that shouldn't happen to children. And I'm not assigning blame, but it was a tough life, and I made it out, and I ended up going to college and had a desire to be a trial lawyer. And by God's grace, I made it, and I became a trial lawyer. And for me, that was my ticket out. That really was my ticket out. It was my ticket to say my family is going to be different than what I experienced, primarily by money. But then a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. While all that was playing out, my wife and I really felt a call to be investors in vulnerable children. That's the way I prefer to look at it. It's sort of like an eternity portfolio. We felt like how many children that are full of promise and gifts are we leaving in street corners and putting into prisons and putting into systems in the United States and all over the world. And we felt called to be investors in children of promise. And we started doing that. So long story short, we became givers. And in the process of doing that, I met a fellow traveler who is also an entrepreneur who had a similar background and a similar calling. And he had started this ministry serving churches who serve children internationally. My wife and I got involved, and then everything just took off. So this is not something that I planned or whiteboarded in a conference room. It's just something that the Holy Spirit did in my life. And now I'm still an advocate. I'm just an advocate for a different kind of client.
Yeah, there's a quote here that says 80% of the world's orphans are economic orphans. They have families who would care for them if they could, but they lack jobs that give them what they need. Jessica Ray, the executive director for Go EX Apparel. And so that's one of those things you got involved in early on, was creating jobs so people could kind of break that cycle through the dignity of work. Is that right?
That's correct. And I'll just, for our viewers and listeners, I'll just sort of set up a framework. First, let's talk about the problem. Forget about our organization. Let's just talk about what's going on with the most vulnerable children in the world. We have a virus of fatherlessness all over the earth. And we know from the word, it even says, in Malachi chapter 4, that the hearts of fathers should turn to their children and children to their fathers, or I will strike the land with a curse. Well, we live right now in a world where the hearts of fathers are turned away from children. And there is a spiritual virus of fatherlessness all over the country. and it makes the family, the essential cell of civilization, very weak. And when the family is weak, it is the most vulnerable child that pays the price. So what I would say is here's the problem. In the United States, the richest country the world has ever known, a country that spends 30 billion taxpayer dollars, like you said, on child welfare, we have more than 4 million families that are at the front door of the foster system. We have nearly 400,000 children that are in the foster system, more than 100,000 that are waiting to be adopted in this country right now. That is what's happening. And when kids go into the system, outcomes are terrible. The foster system tends to feed trafficking systems, prison systems, homelessness systems. So I share this, and the number one driver for how those 4 million families lose their kids, and this is the biggest myth, is not abuse. It is neglect, primarily driven by poverty, preventable reasons. So that's the United States context. And what I will say is you can extrapolate that out globally. The same thing is happening all over the world. The family is breaking down, and children are paying the highest price. So solution-wise, I'm the CEO of the Global Orphan Project, and our mission is to break the orphan cycle through the power of community, commerce, and the love of Jesus. And our basic premise is that the greatest distribution network for the care of our neighbor has been invented by our Creator. It's called the local church. It's in communities all over the world, from the stoning of Stephen to the present. This divine care network has been established. And our basic premise is we need to get local churches in the United States and around the world connected and activated. And we need to have people of goodwill, whether you're Christian or not, but that would actually support local churches caring for kids and families in crisis, with a signature effort to go upstream to strengthen families before they break, so that less kids go into systems. And when kids need family because their family has abused them or horrifically neglected them, then the local church, guess what? We've got more than enough families to completely obliterate this problem. So the Global Orphan Project operates different platforms. We have a technology platform we'll talk about, I'm sure, more, called Care Portal. We have a marketplace platform called GoX Apparel, and that really is meant to show that capitalism, when slightly adjusted to be more just, is the greatest force for orphan prevention in the world. Jobs, not more kids in systems, helps.
Hey everyone, I want you to know about our newest Copper Lodge Library book, English Epic Poetry. English Epic Poetry is a collection with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the Canterbury Tales, selections from Paradise Lost, and it introduces them with historical context, tips for reading epic poetry, as well as footnotes that will help you while reading the text. Sometimes we think about, how can this text be Christian? What does it tell about the relationship we have with Christ? And even in less overtly religious poems like Sir Gawain and the Canterbury Tales, we find Christian themes like courage, forgiveness, and the right use of power. And so go today to copperlodgelibrary.com to see the entire epic collection of books that we have, including the newest one, English Epic Poetry. So go to copperlodgelibrary.com today, or the classicalconversationsbooks.com website to make your purchase. Now back to the show. Yeah, absolutely. So, I have a lot of friends who've fostered or tried to foster and just found it, sometimes almost too heartbreaking to be involved in. Of course, we need more people to step up inside the church to foster. I've always said part of our problem here in the United States is families have given away their God-given responsibilities to the church. The church has given their God-given responsibilities to the government, and the government's willing to take from everyone. And the results are horrific for everyone. I know that, 25% of those in federal prison have been in the foster care system, or some significantly high number. And people like me, I got 3 little kids, not really in a good position to foster or adopt at the moment. just from our family outlook. But that's what you guys try to do, is get upstream so there's not that need for 400,000 or 100,000 new people. And that's what I think so powerful with this platform that you just mentioned. How I understand it is, a lot of people who go in the foster care system are because of simple things. They don't have mattresses for their kids, or they don't have a working refrigerator. So these are kind of poverty related needs. So tell us a little bit about this care portal and like how people can access it, and really what's that whole system look like from y'all's perspective.
It's a great foundation. One of the things, as I describe Care Portal, I will say is sort of like this great opportune moment in history right now. You're right. We have, as the church, in my opinion, rendered unto Caesar that which belongs to us.
Amen.
Vulnerable children and families are our responsibility. We have the God ordained power to step in to burdens with a supernatural authority and power behind us, and a supernatural community that is called to actually give our lives away, be selfless, not selfish. But the coolest thing that's happening right now, why this is such an opportune moment in history, is that the government, and I'm talking about red states, red counties, blue counties, and I'm talking about social workers at a line level that are some of the greatest heroes in the country right now. They're actually begging the church, come help. We were never meant to be parents. We need help. So really interesting that no matter what you read in the news about how everybody hates each other at a street level right now, we're watching unparalleled appetite for communities to partner together across all kinds of lines, with the local church being at the point of care. So with that in mind, Care Portal is actually not rocket science.
Which I love because it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's so here is the basic premise. Sharing platforms, the sharing economy right now is common. It's ubiquitous. If I need a ride sharing through Uber that's second nature. If I need a room sharing through Airbnb, it's ubiquitous. But what we need in the country is care sharing. So if I go into every county in the United States, I can go into any county, LA County, I can go into York County, I'm going to find that around vulnerable children and families, if I lit up a care dot for everybody who has a vested interest in that child, I'm going to find social workers, school teachers, police officers, pregnancy centers. And then I go to every local church. I mean, my gosh, we have local churches on every street corner and full of families called to care and serve. And then I can go to businesses, whether they're Christian or not, just for example, that say, I have a vested interest in vulnerable children and families in my community. So if we lit up care dots, we could see there's more than enough to wipe out the problem in the United States. The problem is not provision, it's connection. And so all of these people are disconnected. So Care Portal is a care sharing platform. We come into a community, we bolt a platform underneath all these people who care and want to care together. And then on one side, people who encounter needs like social workers and school teachers enter vetted needs into an app. Then local churches can build response teams. And the basic premise is, hey, church, if there's a hurting child in your neighborhood, are you willing to see it via text message? Who's going to say no to that? And so there's basically a request response loop where vetted needs go in, and churches can say yes. And in close proximity, because what we're really after is a relationship, care connections get made. So you mentioned about like cribs and bedding and bills. Oftentimes those felt needs are things that a family needs so that their kids don't go in the system. But the truth is, a crib is not enough. Right. A crib is a pretext for a relationship. And what the families really need is wraparound support. What they really need is, if I need a crib, if I'm a single mom and I need a crib so that I can get I don't lose my babies to foster care, you can bet I have other needs. So what we're doing is saying to the church, hey, if mom is a mile away from you, she's going to lose 3 babies to the system. The system has said that she needs bedding, and you can provide that bedding, and you can go show up, meet her caseworker, and meet mom. Would you do that? And then would you make a meaningful connection with her so that after that need of a crib, you're doing what Jesus called you to do, loving on, caring for that mom unconditionally? Well, it turns out the government wants this, believe it or not, across political lines, and the church is stepping up. So just through what I described, started in 2015, today, just in the United States, the local church network using Care Portal has served more than 270,000 children.
Wow.
And here's the cool thing. Not one of those kids knows who our organization is. We stay anonymous. We want the local church to be the hero. And we want mom and dad and grandma to be the hero. So we make the connections and we let God do his thing, and we stay the heck out of the way and just encourage relationships.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So just so I understand it, maybe, single mom, maybe she gets in trouble. So the kids are going to live with grandma, but grandma didn't have 3 beds for the kids. CPS comes in, says, hey, you have to have 3 twin mattresses and bedding. Otherwise they can't stay with you. Otherwise the grandma's stable. So they're about to go into the foster care system. The worker would say, hey, church, we need 3 of these beds. And this church could get a message that says, hey, we need these 3 beds. You can either go to Walmart and buy them, or you could, hey, it's going to be $900 or whatever the number is. You can fulfill that need. Then the individual can receive those. The church can meet with them, invite them to church, ask them what other relationships they could be helpful. Maybe mom's going to be away for a week, so maybe they invite the kids over to Sunday school or something like that. And then they can build a relationship from there. And sometimes it might even be, like you said, the businesses say, hey, I'm going to provide $900 for this need, but then the local church could even go do that. So it's really a network, almost, the Lord says, don't let your left hand know what the right hand is doing, of being able to put the church front and center in our most neediest neighborhoods.
Yeah, you really laid that out perfectly. And let me tease out a couple of the points that you made. So the use case you described is actually a very common use case in Care Portal. So let's go with that grandma. Here's the cool thing. So to the pastors that are out there, you can build response teams in your church. You might have one response team. You might decide every one of my small groups is going to be a response team. So let's say in your church, 50 people say, hey, if there's a hurting child in our area, I'm willing to receive a text message about it. I don't have to do anything if I don't want to, but I'm willing to see it on that. And so let's say 50 people in a church, and then there are 10 churches within a 10-mile radius, and they each have 50. So now I have 500 first responders for that grandma on this. And so that need goes in, and you're exactly right. And what might happen is in those 10 churches with 500 responders, maybe one of them says, hey, I've got the mattresses, and they're in one church. And everybody sees this, by the way, in the system. And then Susie is in another church, and she's like, you know what? I've got all of the bedding. I can take care of all of the sheets and the pillows. And you might have 3 or 4 different response teams from 3 or 4 different churches that are actually teaming up in a relational micro partnership to go love on grandma and support her. And then just teasing out one more thing you said about businesses. Really cool. What if I'm a local church in a low income zip code? And because that's where the kids are coming from, right? The lowest income zip codes in America. And it might be a church of color. It might be a historically Black church in a low income zip code. And the pastor is a bivocational pastor. They're very rich in trust. They're very rich in faith in the community, but they don't have a lot of money. So that $900 seems like a fortune. But grandma might be right next door to that local church. So who's best to build a relationship with that family? The church that's closest should be doing that. So what can happen, it happens every day in Care Portal. So if some of your listeners are businesses or individuals, you can do this. You can build an account, let's say, and you can say, well, I'll put the 900 in, but it is a condition inside of Care Portal that a local church will always be at the point of connection. That's just a hill for us to die on. And so, because we're not going to outsmart God's distribution network.
Sure.
So that $900 from a business can go onto a Care Portal reloadable debit card to that little community church next to grandma. And we have accountability and visibility of all of that. And they can go be the hands and feet of Jesus to the grandma right next to them. And so you're right. And I'd summarize it to say that we are building local care sharing networks all over the country to serve kids and families in crisis as a shared North Star, always with a local church at the nexus.
And I think one of the things is like, if I sign up for this, am I required to meet every need that comes across my desk? Because maybe my church just had a water main break and we have unexpected expenses that have drained our bank account. So if you enter this network, like, are you required to approve every request that comes across your desk?
Not at all. We have to leave room for the Spirit of God to move. So, and the church is huge. I mean, I think of Acts chapter 4, where it said everybody brought what they had to the church and they shared one another's burdens and there were no needy among them. Well, what if that's not just one church? What if a network of churches is the church? So I don't have to feel stressed out if I'm going through some things and it hits my heart and I'm like, man, but I just can't right now. Because Robert in another church next door, like, we can trust the Lord with all of that. So we just create a marketplace for seeing and serving your neighbors who are hurting, and we let God do his thing. And the cool, we're very data rich. What I can say is, just by creating these care sharing networks, right now, more than 80% of the needs that are entered into Care Portal are met.
Oh, praise the Lord.
Which is really, it's really not a testament to Care Portal. Care Portal doesn't serve a single child. It's that the local church and social workers and many others are moving. God is moving through the church, and the church is the hero here, not Care Portal.
You are executive producing a new movie called Possum Trot, which kind of talks about farther downstream what can happen in the foster system and adoption. So tell us a little bit about what prompted you to get involved, make this movie, and why is it so important for us as a church to really understand, what's going on with these vulnerable people that we often, not that we want to overlook them, but we just may not run into them on a regular basis to understand what's going on.
Yeah, so the film is actually called Sound of Hope, the Story of Possum Trot. And but let's talk about Possum Trot. This is a true story. And it's really kind of, the story is about a man who's like a spiritual father to me, and is a legend and like a godfather of the church to child movement in America. In the word, we hear somebody say about Jesus, can anything good come from Nazareth? Mm-hmm. Possum Trot is like Nazareth of the church to child movement. There is a tiny little church in the woods of East Texas in a town called Possum Trot. It's not even on the map. The church is called Bennett Chapel. And in the mid-1990s, the first lady of this little church, in a very poor and earthly sense community, in the woods, heard a word from the Lord that they were supposed to start adopting kids nobody wanted out of the foster system. I mean, really a divine revelation. That community loses kids to foster care, doesn't take them out. And the pastor, her husband, had really, the Lord struck him with it, and the two of them became this force. It's like the spirit of Elijah, as we hear it, this is in this man who's Bishop W.C. Martin. And they started adopting kids out of foster care. And then the church followed, and 22 families adopted 77 of the most difficult to place kids. And they just put a blow into the local foster system. And so telling this story, which I think is one of the great American faith stories that the world doesn't know about, it is to say that by faith, not sight, a local church that has no resources in an earthly sense did the unfathomable. And to that little church, they're like, this isn't rocket science. Pure and faultless religion is this. Why are we so scared? And they're like, I'm not scared. I am living in faith and love. And so they started adopting, and really he's legend. We're making the movie not just to put a movie out there, but we think this movie is going to ignite the church. It is going to awaken the church to say, if this little church in Possum Trot, Texas can do this, what's my excuse? How are we okay in the United States of America right now having 400,000 kids in foster care and nearly 400,000 local churches? I can do that math. The issue is not whether, we have the power in our hands right now to obliterate this crisis in the name of Jesus, and we're not. Well, the point of this film is not just to put a film out, it's to do an entire impact campaign to end the foster crisis in the United States. So the film is meant as a catalyst and a challenge and an encouragement to people to be able to say, these kids are worth fighting for, and they're beautiful, and they're amazing. So how about if we get off our rear ends and we follow the lead of this little bitty heroic church, and we do the same in our communities, and we end this crisis now.
Yeah, and we don't even have to necessarily go as far as them adopting these children with your platform. We can help them stay with the parents that God gave them by meeting, one-time acute needs and then building a relationship from there. I did get to see a pre-screening of the movie Sound of Hope, Possum Trot. I know there'll probably be a little bit of changes, but I can tell you, I definitely, I'm an emotional guy. Play rugby and cry. You can do both. And I definitely had some tears. I really enjoyed the movie. I found it, if you've seen Sound of Freedom, this is, of course, that was about an international issue, but it's very similar to what has here, right? As a dad with kind of in poverty, trying to figure out how to make some money for his kids, they get abducted. This is really upstream from that, where maybe the parents aren't feeling the need for these things. I think you see sex trafficking is probably at an all-time high in our country. Prostitution's at an all-time high. Slavery's still at an all-time high, even though we fought a civil war over ending it. It's still in our country. And a lot of those are poverty-related issues that the church could easily meet if we were aware about it. So
solvable, all solvable. So just let me just hit that moment. Let's just talk about sex trafficking or trafficking of children. The truth is that it's not just all the way over there in another country. It is in our backyard. And if we actually want to solve it, we have to go upstream, because once vulnerable, the issue is when a child is vulnerable, there's going to be someone in that child's life, usually someone trusted, that's the one that traffics that child. And if a child goes into the system, the likelihood of them getting trafficked is much higher. 60% of the girls taken from sex trafficking raids in this country were in foster care. So we actually have a solution. It's not to just fly all over the earth. If you're called by God to do that, I love it. Do it. Be obedient. But it's in our backyard, under our noses, and the local church is the solution. We need to love on and strengthen vulnerable families and children and give them a safe place unconditionally. And when we do that, we can eliminate this problem. And I think when people see this movie, we've just been blown away by the reactions. Inside of Angel Studios, they're the Angel Guild that tests films. This film is testing sky high. People are seeing it and they're moved, not just entertained. We didn't make the movie to entertain people. We made it to move people.
I would not say it's entertainment because I was crying too much.
We made it to move people, but people come out of the film, and at the, you got to stick all the way through it, because you're going to experience what kids experience. You're going to see what's going on with kids, but you're really going to see a triumphant faith. David said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." And the anointing happens in that valley. And I think people who are going through things, not just with vulnerable children, but in your life, you're going to be inspired that no matter what you're going through, no matter how big the problems seem to be, God is still sovereign and he has power that is bigger than any problems that we face. And I think when people come out of the movie, as deep as we take them into the journey of vulnerable children, the movie soars triumphantly as to what we can do if we will operate with a radical, sacrificial faith, and if we will cease to be ruled by fear and comfort.
Mm. I love it. Well, families, if you're listening, you can go to careportal.org and find out how you can bring this platform to your church and your community. It's vital. They need not only the people entering in the data, but then someone who is able to help fulfill those needs. And you might be saying, well, Robert, I'm homeschooling 3 kids. We're barely making it out as ourselves. You don't have to necessarily be the one that's providing the finances or providing the end goods. You can just be the champion for your church, help organize the groups, bring this to your elder board and just say, hey, this is something that I would love to be involved in and something that our church can get involved in to help the least of these. So I absolutely agree that this is the church's responsibility, as you mentioned, that we have the resources. Our King has cattle on 1,000 hills, and he can help us meet these needs when we step out in faith. So, Joe, any final words and any other websites that they should go to or places they can connect with the Care Portal team?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everybody, go see this film. Like, we need on July 4th, when this comes out, it's a follow-up to Sound of Freedom. July 4th last year that came out. This comes out July 4th, but we need a major show of force in theaters all across the country. We need the people of God and anybody who cares about kids and families in crisis to go flood theaters, buy tickets, buy groups of tickets, take your whole church, have your whole church go together to experience this together. But this is going to be a wide theatrical release, but we need to make a statement in the culture in our theaters about the value of these kids. And one way to do that is with our feet, by flooding theaters. Make the New York Times, make Fox News, make CNN say, what in the world? Why are all of these people flooding theaters to see this film? So we need your help. Just go into Sound of Hope, the Story of Possum Trot. You can see how you get tickets. You can see how you can pay it forward. But I'm pleading, like, we need to show this country why these kids matter, and let's do it at the theaters.
Yeah, it's so powerful because the media that can give us millions or billions of dollars of just focused energy on solving this problem and something that can really catapult us to reducing the significance of this issue in our country and really helping our foster system stop being so overwhelmed, getting families, supporting families like God commanded us to do. So just thanks so much, Joe, for this. I was so excited to hear about this organization a little bit over a year ago and the great work that you're doing. And hopefully that 270,000 number that you've helped so far doubles here in the next 12 months, not because of issues increasing, but because of just the number of hands increasing
Amen.
to support these needs. So thank you so much. Go to careportal.org, go see the movie, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Joe, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Joe and the careportal.org and about the upcoming movie, Sound of Hope, Possum Trot. Be sure to buy your tickets for the July 4th opening. Let's make this thing big. Please tag me on X or Instagram, The Robert B. Show. I'd love to see a photo of you going to the movie and how you enjoyed it. I can tell you that this is going to be a great movie. It's going to elevate the conversation on solving this foster care issue. And really, it's great to know that we don't have to feel bad about what we can or can't do, that we can get involved how we can and when we can with this great app and just with the resources God's given us. So keep listening to Refining Rhetoric, and we'll see you at the movie theater.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.